What's up, dads? Welcome back to another episode of the Fit Dad Club podcast. My name is Jason Barrett, and I'm here without Travis Jones this week as he gets ready to have a beautiful family holiday in Europe. So wish him all the best for that one. I think they're going to go have a winter Christmas, which should be awesome and amazing. But I'm left here in Australia holding it down in the 30-degree heat. So I'm looking forward to this episode with you all, and it is a topic that for me has come up a lot with a lot of the clients I've been speaking to lately. And it's something that as parents, it's easy to say, but it's not as easy to do. And that is the subject of sleep. And sleep is one of the most powerful fat loss and muscle gain accelerators that most people ignore and most people tend to sort of push under the rug. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, number one, at the top, there is a great book on understanding sleep. It's by a guy called Matthew Walker. It's called Why We Sleep. It doesn't really answer that question, but it does answer how important sleep is for us all in many aspects of life. So that is a book I highly recommend you checking out, downloading and listening to. One of my guys listened to that recently and it really helped him as well. But one of the big things across the board for everyone I'm speaking to is sleep is an issue, right? I've got an 8-week-old now and a 2-year-old who, the sleep is just not always there. And it's hard because you also, as a parent, sometimes want to take your own time and you want to take a little bit of time to yourself. Often that is after the kids go to sleep, or if you're, crazy, it's before they wake up in the morning. Or one of them wakes up and you get up with them and then you wait until the next one wakes up. So it is a hard thing to come by. It's not the easiest thing in the world to say, oh, just sleep more. And we know that there are realistic constraints in that from there's a mental health perspective, there's a physical health perspective, there's a just keeping on top of the housework perspective. Like for us, once the kids go down, it's like clean the house, wipe down the high chairs, do the dishes, all of that kind of stuff needs to be done. And then at that point, it's like, well, if you want to take some time for yourself to just kind of, not have to be a parent, not have to be in work mode, you've got to do that either then or you just go to sleep. So it is a fine balancing act, but I think it's important. I think a lot of people, they take time for themselves, quote unquote, but they do that by scrolling their phone mindlessly. And then, an hour later, they're like, oh shit, it's 10:30. I should really think about going to bed. But they're all hyped up from the reels and the posts and whatever else it is that they've been watching, or getting into arguments with on the internet with strangers, as some people tend to do. So there's many, many benefits to having a greater sleep. Greater than 6 hours is probably that's the minimum benchmark that I would aim for. If you're getting 6 hours or less, or ideally not less, 6 hours or less, you're in the territory where there is absolutely no way you are operating at your best. No matter what it is that you're doing in the evening, no matter what it is you're doing early in the morning, you would be better off getting an extra hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours sleep. There's no doubt about that. When there was a study done in this book where they showed people who voluntarily over 10 days slept for only 6 hours, and they were self-reportedly cognitively impaired, and I think by tests as well, very cognitively impaired, not able to process things as quickly as they were able to before. Their benchmarks all fell. Like it's just a no-brainer that if you are operating on 6 hours of sleep, you are more than likely operating at less than ideal capacity. No, there's no real doubt about that. And I think most of us know that when you have a shit night's sleep, you wake up the next morning, you're groggy, you're slow, things aren't moving well. But lack of sleep has its impacts on a number of other areas. So if we look at the consequences of having a lack of sleep, on average, especially if you're in a calorie deficit, on average, you will lose more muscle mass and you will lose less body fat. Even if your calories are the same, even if you're weight training, even if you're getting your protein in, if you're having less sleep, you'll be burning through more muscle mass and less fat as a proportion of the weight that you lose. The weight you lose more often than not won't change, but the amount of muscle mass that you lose will. And that's a big reason why we diet in the way that we do, so we can preserve muscle mass and lose fat, because no one wants to just lose all their muscle and look skinny fat. That's not the goal here. So sleep is vital for that one, right? Sleep is incredibly vital. It's also vital for regulating your hunger hormones. We have leptin and ghrelin. We have all these hunger hormones that control when we feel full, when we feel hungry, right? And things like drops in our blood sugar. And those hunger hormones get a bit out of whack when you're not sleeping well. That'll often be the reason why when people go out on a night and they have some beers and they drink, their sleep is affected really, really badly by that, because your body can't really get into its deeper levels of sleep while it's still processing the alcohol. Essentially, all of its energy is focused on, let's get this literal poison out of our body. Let's get the liver to process it. that process means that more often than not, your core body temperature is raised, which is often why you wake up afterwards and you're quite warm, because your body's been working hard to pump out that poison. And when it does do that, it can't really do all of the other restorative processes that it needs to do in order for you to have the best night's sleep, which is why also a lot of alcoholics report after drinking, nightly for years, when they stop, they have really vivid, really intense dreams, because there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on in the brain that's not been processed through the unconscious, that's not been processed during sleep. The dreams haven't come up. And so they report really, really intense, crazy dreams because the alcohol has been suppressing that part of the brain during sleep. So that is a reason why when people wake up the next day, they'll often go, "Oh, I'm really high. I need to, get a bacon and egg, McMuffin and all this other kind of stuff," because their sleep hormones, their hunger hormones, because of their lack of sleep, are out of whack. So they're getting sent these sort of weird signals. They're not sure when they're full. They're just kind of snacking on things like it. It is a big reason why people kind of fall off the wagon the next day after a night out of drinking, not because necessarily they're hungover, but because of how their sleep has been affected. So sleep affects a number of different things in that regard. It is a huge contributor to your results. And it is honestly something that as soon as someone tells me, "Oh, I'm hitting my calories, but I'm not losing weight," my number one question is, how is your sleep and how is your stress? All right. Stress is another one that we can go into in the next week, but this sleep thing and getting sleep right is so important. It has far more benefits than most people give it credit for when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it is the thing that I look for if someone is hitting their calories and they should be in a deficit and they're not getting the result. How's sleep? Sleep hasn't really been good. All right, cool. We need to start to dial in on that, because that extra hour, 90 minutes that you can get is going to make a huge difference in your results, right? Even if it means that you might, even if it's like every other day, you might have to skip a workout. Instead of going 4 days a week, you go 3 days a week just to get a bit of extra sleep, or, you spread it out and you do more workouts, but you do them for shorter time. You only go for half an hour so you can fit in a little bit of extra sleep. That is going to be a net positive, because sleep is a huge, like an extra half an hour to an hour of sleep versus an extra half an hour to an hour of your workout. The sleep is going to have a much more profound compounding effect on your health, on your lifestyle, on your results. Like when it comes to a lack of sleep, there is also the issue of Alzheimer's and dementia. The incidence of those in people who have less sleep is dramatically higher, because when you are sleeping, your body, there's a little cavity between your spinal cord and your brain, and essentially plaque can build up in that cavity. And that is, during sleep is when your body tends to flush that out. And if you're not getting enough or high quality enough sleep, that can build up and build up and build up, and that can start to cause the degenerative brain issues that we see as well. So when it comes to solving this problem, we need to start really simply, and we need to go, number one, what time do I need to be awake? All right. And it might be worth rejigging that. So it's going, all right, well, if I'm going to take what Jason said, instead of going to the gym for an hour, I'm going to go for half an hour or 45 minutes or something like that. So that means I need to wake up at 5:30, right? Let's say that that's when your alarm needs to go off. We work backwards from there. And ideally you work backwards in blocks of 90 minutes. So you aim for about 7.5 hours of sleep, like actually being asleep. The reason why is because your body and your sleep tends to come in 90-minute cycles, the circadian rhythms that it goes through. It goes through the light sleep, and then the REM sleep, and then the deep sleep, and then it kind of cycles through those. And each one is about 90 minutes. So that should mean if you're asleep for 7.5 hours, you will tend to wake up basically at the end of one of your cycles in your lighter sleep, which is better than waking up in the middle of a deep sleep, because that's when you tend to wake up and feel groggy. If you've ever, set an alarm, you've woken up half an hour before it and gone, "Oh, cool, I've got an extra half an hour sleep." You feel good, but you go back to sleep for an extra half an hour. I'm going to feel amazing. No, you end up feeling you completely like shit, because you go back down for, another round of deep sleep, and you're in the middle of that deep sleep when the alarm goes off, and now you're like, "Oh, holy shit," right? So it's important to try and set it in those 90-minute cycles if you can. So we work back 7.5 hours. So if we're getting up at 5:30, go back 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, that's 10 o'clock. So you need to be asleep at 10 o'clock if you want to be waking up at 5:30, right? Simple enough. We need to be asleep at 10 o'clock. Now, what does that mean from before that? That means that we need to make sure that we are, if we work backwards from here, we want to make sure that maybe we're winding down by 9:30. All right. Or maybe, well, we want to be make sure we're in bed trying to sleep, like closing our eyes by like 9:45, 9:50. So maybe we need to wind down earlier than that. Maybe it's 9:15. It's like, cool, that's when we, brush our teeth and jump into, or maybe we do it earlier than that or whatever. But you've got to make sure that you are actively preparing for bedtime, ideally with some kind of a routine that you do. For me, I tend to read, like reading before bed is a big one for me. I can just sit there and read a book. After about 5-6 pages, I'm cool. I'm basically like ready to sleep at that point. So because I have read before bed every single night for most of my life, so that is a very hardwired pattern and a habit. And the more you can hardwire those patterns and habits and routines, there's a reason why routines work. Same thing for kids. You don't more than anyone, if you fuck up a bedtime routine, what impact that can have on them going to bed. So you need to make sure your routines are in place and your routines are consistent. So let's say, all right, 9:15, that means that I've got to start getting ready for bed around that time. Then before that, we want to look at, all right, so ideally 90 minutes to 2 hours beforehand, we're cutting out screen time. Right? Now, there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but as far away from bed as you can get the screens, the better. You can get blue light blocking and either glasses or apps on your phone that will get rid of the blue light, which does send signals to your brain to stimulate it to stay awake, which is why it's hard to go to sleep after sitting there scrolling your phone. Just try and, at the very least at that 9:15, 45 minutes before you go to bed, at that point, put your phone away, put your screens away as best as possible, or minimize the amount of time you spend on them, because that can really actively wire your brain to keep awake. You also want to trying to minimize caffeine intake, let's say around 10 hours before bed. The reason why I say 10 hours is because caffeine can have a half-life for about 5 hours, and it takes a long time for that caffeine to fully get out of your system. And every caffeine molecule that is bound to your brain is one that means that you can't have your adenosine, like it's called an adenosine blocker. It means that it stops you from your adenosine from attaching to your brain, and it means that that's like one of your tiredness hormones. That means that you're just not going to feel tired, right? So you want to make sure you cut out caffeine, I would say at least 8 hours beforehand, but 10 is ideal. So you're not having too many high caffeine drinks. Now, caffeine tolerance is different for everyone. Some people, I have a coffee and go to sleep. It's like, cool. Maybe it's not the best sleep in the world, but yeah, it's fine, whatever. But just be aware that might be a factor. So having some method of, knowing when you're going to be cutting out caffeine, trying not to have too big or heavy of a meal on an evening as well. That can be a big one. If you have a really big, really heavy meal, it's going to take a long time for your body to digest. While it's digesting, it's burning energy. It's increasing your core temperature. You're probably getting really hot, and it's going to be very difficult to sleep. You might be getting reflux. There's all sorts of issues. So try and have your meals earlier in the evening before you go to bed, so you've got that bit of time for digestion, because lying down isn't the best for your digestion either. All of these things tend to compound. So the only other thing I would reference, apart from alcohol, which I've already touched on a little bit, if you are going to have a drink earlier in the evening. Try to limit it so that it's kind of out of your system by the time you're going to bed, so it doesn't affect your actual sleep. The only other thing I would consider is the temperature and the comfort as well. So making sure that your room is cool so that you can, put the blankets on and get nice and warm. That's like an ideal. You want to really have a colder room. Not necessarily, you don't want it to be cold or freezing, right? But you want it to be colder, and that tends to help you get to sleep, because then you can get warm on the outside. You're not getting too warm. You want to really have that sort of balance of a cool room but warm covers. That tends to be ideal, and at minimal lights in your room if possible, right? Like if you can get blackout curtains, or you've got them, awesome. If you've got little lights that come on from different devices and stuff like that, even just putting like a little bit of tape over them, just making sure there's minimal light leaking into the room will be important. The final aspect of it is obviously within that nighttime routine, you've got to have some capacity to let go of some stress. And let's say maybe example, it's journaling, maybe it's having a chat with your wife or your partner or whatever, but doing something to help you kind of, if you tend to stay awake because you've got a lot of stress or you've got a lot of stuff going on in your mind, you've got to find a way of dealing with that. You've got to find a way of getting that out of your system so that it's not eating away at your brain and causing you to stay awake. And it might be as simple as writing a dot point list of things that you need to get done tomorrow, so that you're not sitting there constantly thinking about it. There's a lot of different things that you can do. It's very individual, but this is the power of sleep. And this is the importance of sleep on a fat loss journey. If you want to be the best dad you can be as well, none of us are our best selves when we're sleep deprived, that's for sure. So make sure you do your best to get the sleep, the quality of sleep that you need. And if you have any questions on that, obviously feel free to let us know. But until next time, I'm looking forward to seeing you all then. If you have any topics you'd love us to cover over the next couple of weeks, I've got a bit more capacity to be flexible with it because it'll probably just be me for the next couple of weeks. Let me know what it is you're interested in learning a little bit more about leading into the Christmas period. But if you need any help with this kind of stuff, head to fit-dad.club, book in a call, help you out, see if you can we can come up with a bit of a plan, a holistic plan, looking at your whole life, not just, hey, eat this and hey, train like this, because it is a whole life thing. Stress and sleep are big components that add up to your fat loss. So if you need anything, reach out to us. Until next time, I'll see you then.